usually begin by defining what is and what is not a tapestry. A lot of people think anything you hang on the wall is a tapestry, but it isn't. What's most commonly thought about as being a tapestry is needlepoint. Not a tapestry. Uses a needle, uses thread on a canvas backing. It's also not computerized weaving. When I tell people I have a loom that's got a computer kind of facet to it, they wonder, well, is that what makes the design? And the answer is no. That kind of weaving shows both the parts of the weaving. So just real quick to let you know about the aspects of a weaving. This is the structure, the white part that goes up and down in the weaving, and it's called the warp. And the part that goes across perpendicular to the warp is the weft. So in those computerized weavings, when you see them, they are showing both of those. It's called plain weave. But a tapestry doesn't do that. It only shows the weft. So the definition, the real actual definition of a tapestry is weft-faced, discontinuous weaving. Discontinuous means every time there's a color change, I add another little loop of what's called a butterfly, a little bundle. So every time there's a color change, another bundle of yarn, which means when you're doing very complex pieces, there's lots and lots of bundles of yarn. And then I finish these on both sides. That's why we can hang them like this, because the tail, usually have a little tail hanging out of the every color change, and I use a tapestry needle to sew them in. So basically I'm making an object. That's why I show the warp the way I do. And I have it hanging on acrylic poles so that it's easy to hang. But it also, I create like a piece of fabric with the warp so that it can be hung this way. So not every weaving can be hung, or every tapestry can be hung this way. You have to make this little piece of fabric. It's called a Damascus edge. So that's what a tapestry is. It's not a rug. People always ask, is that a rug? Can I put it on the floor? A rug would have a thicker warp, which is the white fringe part, and would have a thicker weft so that it would hold up to foot traffic. These are specially made to be on the wall. This show is called Series Selections, which means I have lots and lots of work that I do in different series. I just started a newest series. We'll hit that one last. My father from the Midwest stayed with me and wanted to take back some window views of the New Mexico landscape. So that's what I started with, making views of windows to send home with him. And after a while, I got known for windows. Windows became my thing. So every piece will have a window. Sometimes the window's quite small, sometimes it's very abstract. The first series was inspired by Escher, so it's called the Architectonic series, sort of creating the illusion of depth by just placing color together. Not doing a lot of shading, not doing any of that paintlery stuff, but creating a feeling that you're walking in or seeing through a lot of depth into a vista or a scene. The next series I started then was called the Feng Shui series, which are these 4 little small tapestries down here. And the Feng Shui series has to do with the Chinese system of color placement in different directions to affect the movement of energy. So they're all about color, which makes the color choice of them be what they're about, as well as the symbol inside, which is a trigram, which stands for the different elements that they represent. So red is fire, green is wood, the ochre yellow is earth, and each one complements a different thing in your house. Like the green one is great for if you have bad health. Those really keep me honest because they seem simple, but simple is almost harder to do than not simple. You have to make sure your lines are straight because it's all based on very square lines. I can get away with some technical difficulties in some of the other pieces, but those, no, I can't get away with any of that. The pieces in the back behind there are also from that Feng Shui series, but this one's taking the trigram and just using that format to make the windows. Then the next series I started was because I was using mathematics so much in all the designs previously as to what the format, which is the shape of the tapestry, Usually a long piece, I use the golden mean as the proportion of the width to the length, as well as squares, which are also very, so I was using, and then within, to do the designing, you use a proportion systems that are very mathematical. Fibonacci series is one of them. So what I basically decided was, why am I embedding math in the pieces only? Let me take out some mathematical principles and make them the subject of the pieces. So these are straight line spirals, which are created just by having the hypotenuse of every triangle and adding a new triangle on it. And when you put the color in, you get this great, wonderful spiral. And these proportions are the Fibonacci numbers inverted. So you start out with 13, but then you have 1, then 8 and 1. So you see how two sets invert into each other and give it that pleasing shape. So that's called the Universal Language series. Within the Universal Language series, I started another subset series called the Sacred Geometry series, which has to do, and we'll be looking at that in the next room, has to do with just the symbolic nature of numbers. Then we go to the Fractured Square series. I started falling in love with different artists, so Klimt, just his backgrounds were so totally appealing to me that I've thought why don't I just take Klimt backgrounds and make them mine and play with them, and then break up the squares with solid colors from the borders. These are some of the funnest pieces I do because they, I know what I call rules about them, which is what proportion they're going to be, where the stops and starts are, where the bands are. But I don't necessarily know where all the color placements are going to be. So it's more of a play-like procedure, is playing with color. They have challenges though, I mean, to keep the movement of energy through there. On this one, the white is what really moves everything through. So figuring out where all the placements are, that's the fun of that. The next series is called the Reduction series, which is this piece here, as well as a few pieces in the next room. And I was telling some people earlier, but just about what do I mean by reduction? In that it starts out very complex on the outside borders and moves towards a less complexity. So those middle views are very simple comparatively to the beginning borders. They also are what I make when I have lots and lots of baskets of bits of yarn from making all the other pieces. So that's when I say, oh, I need to make a reduction piece, then I have less and less of those baskets of yarns of lots of little bits. The newest series that I've started are the two on the back wall. And they are studies for a series I'm entitling Interwoven Mesas, where I'm going back to more of my landscape forms. These are studies, so I'm going to make some larger ones, where the landscape will proportionally be larger as well. But then I weave these ribbons of color through the top part of the skies. These are studies, so they have a very different feel, which is what I was going for. How does this one work compared to that one? And as I progress, I may end up making more ribbon-esque kind of ideas of instead of so straight line. A lot more work, but it could make an interesting piece. So that is the newest series. Interwoven Mesas Gorge and Interwoven Mesas Road. This is one of the sacred geometry pieces, squares and triangles. So it's about the meditational quality of thinking about number. What does number mean? How do shapes that have a certain number associated with them, how do the shapes then fit together? So mandala is usually about a circle, but we end up with this very circular looking shape from creating small triangles and squares, and diamonds are pretty much just squares that you tip on one end on their vertex. So what do you think about when you think about the number 3 or the number 4? Well, 3 is one of the first numbers that 2 can make. 2 circles make a third shape. From that third shape you can make a triangle. 2 triangles then make a square. Squares are stability, triangles, little not so I mean, there's all these wonderful ideas that you can just, think of the symbologies of numbers. And here are the reduction pieces again. These are the newest ones. Reduction lightning. And I played with using different colors, the same colors actually, but in different placements. So what happens when the same wonderful peacock becomes the frame? What happens when it becomes the inside color? And trying to keep generally the same colors happening in the lightning bolts. And the final pieces are 2 more feng shuis, which is the blue water of the north for career success, and the purple wind of the southeast for wealth. So the trigram on that one is water, and the trigram on this one is the wind. And then there's 3 little tiny fractured square pieces that go with the black one that's in the other room.